Hello there, it's 3 o'clock on a Tuesday, and we all know what that means. Another riveting episode of Behind Breaking Bond. We're going to hear from three of the judicial candidates during this live stream. And remember, if you haven't voted, be sure to vote. Early voting ends Friday, right? And then Tuesday is the big day. Introduce yourself.
Hey, it's Andy Kahn, Director of Victim Services, Victim Advocacy, Crime Stoppers of Houston, and it's a new month.
Yes, it is.
It's a brand new month. So,
Go Stros.
This is true. They're going to play tonight.
Yeah. Do you know that was November 1st when they won the World Series in 2017? That was November the 1st.
So it's like 5 years later. Here we are.
It has to happen, right? It's an omen. It's an omen. Joining me is this young lady. Introduce yourself, dear.
Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine Thomas, and I am running for a judicial bench, the 184th Criminal District Court here in Harris County.
Why did you pick that particular court?
Well, the reason I picked that particular court was that I had seen too many deficiencies in our criminal justice system. And I saw that there was essentially a lack of resources for people who enter the criminal justice system and essentially continue to return. And so what I want to do, if elected, is implement a youth and community court. And it's going to be targeted for people between the age of 18 to 25 to give them access to justice. So what does that mean? Access to mental health treatment, drug and alcohol rehabilitation, and career placement. That currently does not exist in that particular court. And what I found through campaigning is that there are so many organizations who are doing great work. Organizations like WorkFaith, who are helping people with career placement, and they're just not tied to the court system. And I think that what a better place for people to actually get connected to community resources than through the criminal justice system.
One of the things, and Randy and I have been doing stories for years, and one of the things we've noticed in the last few years is how young a lot of the offenders are these days, and particularly escalating with violent offenses. So I think that,
Yeah, you're picking a really good range there, 18 to 25, because I mean, most people, if you make it to 30, your early 30s, and you haven't been in the criminal justice system, the odds that you will are very slim. It's kind of that age group that you really have to kind of see to catch them and sort of pull them out of it and let them know that, hey, there are other options. You don't have to do this.
Exactly. And data shows actually that 72% of repeat offenders are from that age range. We all know when we were 18 and 25, we were not adults.
Right.
We're still not.
But in the criminal justice system, once you are charged at a certain age, you will be treated like an adult. And so I believe that we need to be providing more resources to these particular individuals so that they don't return back to the criminal justice system.
Your race is kind of interesting because you beat the incumbent.
I did beat the incumbent in March.
Yeah. What do you think led to that? I know that with Abigail Anastasio, we did a few stories on her in Breaking Bond reports, and she kind of had a pattern of letting dangerous people out repeatedly on multiple felony bonds.
Well, I think what led to me defeating the incumbent in March was just hard work.
Yeah.
Getting out there in the community, talking to people, hearing their concerns. People want to judge who's going to be in the community in and out of election season. It shouldn't be that you know the people who are running because there's an election that's going to go on. And I think people could tell that this is something that I was very passionate about. And I'm very serious about implementing these changes in the court system. And I'm currently a homicide prosecutor. So I have a lens that is able to be a little bit more balanced when I'm on the bench.
Why is it good to have a background like that?
Well, I think you are able to understand that two things can exist. You can balance the concerns of community safety while also ensuring that defendants' rights are protected. And that's something that I think should be true for everyone who is on the bench. And my lens as a homicide prosecutor, I handle only capital murder cases. So none of my victims, quote unquote, are alive. And so it helps me be able to bring a balanced perspective to the bench where I'm able to dismiss cases that need to be dismissed because we can't prove them beyond a reasonable doubt.
Sure.
I'm able to advocate for victims of crime. And so I think that that's most appropriate, especially in a district court.
You also, too, you have to have a really good grasp on everything because capital murder cases, they're going to get reviewed and appealed. And so you really have to kind of know your stuff, so to speak.
You do, and you have to be able not to just handle capital murder cases, but the other cases that this court sees.
Right.
And so while being at the district attorney's office, I've tried the cases that this court sees, ranging from murder cases to sexual assault to state jail felonies. And so it's about having that balanced approach of not just handling those cases, but actually going to trial.
And as a prosecutor, I'm sure you've done several trials.
Several trials. Mm-hmm.
Tell everybody out there why they should vote for Catherine Thomas.
Well, I'm asking for your support in this November election because I believe that my perspective on the bench is the right one that is needed. I will balance the concerns of community safety while also ensuring that defendants' rights are protected. I want to implement a youth and community court for people between the ages of 18 and 25 to give them access to justice, access to mental health treatment, drug and alcohol rehabilitation, and career placement. I also believe that having the lens of somebody who is from this Houston community, who went to the high school for performing and visual arts, who is a double HBCU graduate from Spelman and Howard, and who is currently a homicide prosecutor who handles the most serious cases that our county sees. So I'm asking for your support and vote for Catherine Thomas for the 184th Criminal District Court.
What's it been like for you running? I'm assuming this is.
Is it your first time?
First time.
Is it what you would think it would be like or no?
It's not. It's absolutely not, because a lot of people don't realize that there are so many judicial races on the bench. And actually, our ballot is comprised of mostly judicial races.
Yeah.
I've also realized that a lot of people just don't understand that there are differences between criminal court judges, civil court judges, probate court judges. And so there's been a lot of education, which has been great. But I think also people are just confused about the issues, right? Like we see a lot of narratives on TV about, bail reform. Some people don't know that there is no felony bail reform.
Correct.
There's only misdemeanor bail reform. Right. So there's been a lot of education, which has been great, being able to tell people what a district court is. People think you have to be assigned to a particular district to vote in this race. Yeah. They don't realize that it's a county court seat.
And if you don't work in it and you've never really been involved in any way, I totally get why people don't understand it, because it's not part of their life.
Exactly.
And a lot of times the only thing you really know about the judicial system is what you see on TV. Mm-hmm. And that's just a skewed, and everything works out in an hour. And I'm glad you brought that up too, Catherine, because it's really important when you vote. If you're going to go vote, go through the entire ballot, go all the way down. And vote in every single judicial race.
Absolutely. And so we're telling people, do not stop. There is no more straight ticket voting.
That's right.
So you have to go from race to race to race. I've seen it be anywhere between 96 to 98 races on some people's ballots. So it's a long ballot, but I encourage everyone to keep voting, especially for your judges.
Yes.
On a note, as someone who's been on the board of Parents and Murdered Children and Surviving Family Members Honest, I just thank you for everything that you've done. And, we wish you the best of luck in everything. And as we have said ad nauseum, I don't understand why public safety has become so partisan. I can't grasp that concept, but that's the reality that we're in today. So thank you for taking the time out of your life to run for office. Because that takes a lot of courage to do that.
And being a judge is that's not an easy gig. I mean, it's a difficult job to do. And of course, we've opened this up to every sitting judge to come and talk to us. No one would, because not me.
True. I'm the evil guy.
You are. See, he admitted it. Catherine Thomas, thank you so much. Good luck to you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
We're going to
hang around, right?
Yes.
Hang around.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Catherine's going to make us lunch. No. I am kind of hungry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to hear from Melissa Morris. We've got two.
In the meantime, while she's getting over
commercial break,
axe grinding, fear mongering coffee, because that will perk you up.
Yes, it
so
will.
Remember, if you have coffee, it's good to the last axe.
Thank you so much for that, Melissa Morris. Thank you for joining us. Tell us what the race you're in.
My name is Melissa Marie Morris, and I'm running for the 263rd District Court. It's a felony district court here in Harris County.
And the incumbent lost?
Yes, to me in March.
Yeah. What do you attribute that to?
I think that it was very important in March for us to really look at what was going wrong in the judiciary and what had kind of shaken the public trust. And so I picked this particular bench specifically because I found that this court would defer to or prefer to appoint to private attorneys versus using the public defender's office as often as the public defender's office could be used.
Yeah.
And so that was very important to me to make sure that not only were people who were indigent getting the services that they needed from competent attorneys, but also the resources that were available in the public defender's office, and to move the courts along, to have trials, to make sure that certain attorneys weren't overburdened with their caseload and couldn't do the work and get the work done and move things along. So people are staying in jail for, up to 2 years waiting on trials.
Right.
And I thought that it was very important to get in there where I could see that I could make some differences.
It's interesting too, because we've looked at this, and it's wild how you'll see some courts that have only a handful in a whole year of trials, and other courts, they'll have twice as many.
Yes. And I know that there are a lot of things that could be attributed to that, but I am a trial lawyer. And so if elected, with the support of your viewers, if elected, I intend to go to trial. I intend to push things to trial. I intend to manage my docket in a way that I will know what is being delayed because of reasonable delays, or being delayed because of incompetence or negligence. And that's important to the victims of crimes, that's important to society, that's important to people who are accused of crimes.
It's important to defendants. Like
Yeah.
you always said, you're not doing anybody any good
Right.
by dragging things years and years. And we've always said, especially when you're out on bond wasn't meant to be years.
Right.
It wasn't
Yeah.
meant to be years.
It's not even set up that way to where somebody would actually be out on bond for 4, 5, 6 years. It's just, the system can't even handle that.
And I just recently had a case that just closed out that was charged in 2017. And so the person who was hurt in that case had to wait 5 years for justice. The person who was accused of that crime, who ended up pleading guilty, had changed her life and moved forward in her life. And now here she has to now face the consequences of what happened 5 years ago. And she'd been on bond for 5 years. So really, essentially, she had been on a probation or a supervision for 5 years.
I mean, nobody, like he said, nobody benefits
Right.
when it takes years for something to go to trial.
Right.
What's it been like? This is your first run for office?
It's not. Actually, I ran for Senate District 13 in
Really?
2020.
Yeah.
I was unsuccessful
That
in the
was
primary.
against Miles, right?
It
Yeah.
was.
How does this compare with that race?
Well, Harris County is huge.
Boy, it is.
So campaigning for a Senate district, a state Senate district, and campaigning for a countywide district in the 4th largest county in America is it's vastly different. And raising the money that you would need to touch all of the voters
Right.
is very, very difficult. So my campaign was not based on throwing money at stuff. It was hard work.
A lot of door knocking, right?
A lot of door knocking and a lot of passing the word, making sure that I was out there in the community. But that wasn't a change for me because I'd always been in the community.
Yeah. When you were out running for judge, what would you hear from people? Would you hear like their concerns or?
Yes. So what I've been hearing a lot when I'm just talking to voters is that they ask, are you one of those judges that will, release people out on bail? And so I take the time to discuss bail and what it means and who has the right to it, which is virtually
Everybody.
has the
Yes,
right
yes.
to bail, except in certain circumstances.
Right.
And so I explained that, and I explained that there was a time when I first started practicing where people had a bail scheduled. And so when my clients would call me and tell me what they were charged with, I could tell them exactly how much their bond would be. I could calculate it myself. And so it's vastly different now because just as a general culture in the courthouse, every case is looked at under the rules on what factors do you consider when determining bail. And so the bail bonds now are significantly higher than they were when I first started practicing 16 years ago.
And too, the thing, and I'm sure you'll remember this, people didn't years ago, and you're right, everybody has the right to be out on bond. There's no question about that. But Years ago, you didn't see defendants that had 3, 4, 5, 6 felony bonds. That's kind of the whole reason behind the Breaking Bond series, because we were seeing that when you never saw that before. Everybody has bond conditions, and the bond condition that everybody has is don't break the law.
Don't break the law.
Right? And then you've got people that are repeatedly picking up new criminal charges, and then that's kind of
what's put the emphasis, I think, on the judicial races.
right.
You've
Yeah.
not seen before, and now you have.
And you're absolutely right. And so I think that it's a holistic system approach to reducing crime. It is the judges setting reasonable, sufficiently high bonds to assure that the defendants come to court. It's also the state moving forward on motions to deny bond and having those hearings within 7 days. Because if they don't do that, then the judge has no options to hold at no bond on cases where you would otherwise be eligible for bond. It also is the bonding companies making sure that they are accepting their right amount.
Right.
Were you surprised when you found out
and
that
collateral.
some of them were actually doing lower than the? I've been doing this for, I had no idea.
Yeah,
We went lower than 10%.
Yeah, we were here like 2, 3, 4%. That was just incredible.
Yeah, no, I mean, I had a client who had an $80,000 bond, and the bonding company took $2,500 down. And back 10 years ago, you had to have collateral for $80,000.
Yes,
So even if
yes,
you had
right.
$8,000.
You had to put up somebody's house, or yes.
And on the one hand, that puts people who don't have access to those types of funds or assets at a disadvantage. But it also, I think, made setting bonds not be as, what's the word?
Punitive.
It's punitive
Yeah.
because you could set a bond at $80,000. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can set a bond at $80,000 thinking that it's sufficiently high to make sure that you've covered the factors. But if it only takes $2,500 to get out, then perhaps
Right.
you might have considered that differently.
I can remember back in the 80s, if you were a defendant charged with murder and you had no prior convictions, you had no kind of record, $10,000 was like the standard bond for a murder charge.
Right. And when I first started practicing in 2006, if you committed murder with no priors, or if you were alleged to have committed
Right.
murder with no priors, it was a $50,000.
Yeah.
So when I hear people, when I'm knocking on doors and someone says, such and such charged with murder, and they got on a $75,000 bond, I'm thinking, that's high.
That's right. Yeah, yes,
So
yeah.
I think that there's a lot of misinformation about whether people should even be out.
Right. Well, and I think from a victim standpoint, if you're the parent of a child that was murdered and then you see the alleged killer walking up and down the street, your initial reaction is going to be, this is wrong. I lost my child and here this person's just walking around free as a bird.
Right. And I can definitely understand from the perspective of the victim and the victim's family. But we also have to remember that one of the most important protections that we have as Americans is the presumption of innocence.
That's correct.
And so if you're charged with a crime, the only tool of bail, the only purpose of bail is to make sure that you come to court. Now,
Right.
while that's happening,
Yeah.
the judge who's responsible for public safety does also have to consider safety of society, safety of the victim,
That's right.
things like that.
And if I'm the defendant and I'm innocent and I want to go to trial and prove that I'm innocent, the last thing I'm going to do is run around and pick up a bunch of criminal charges, right? That's not the way to do it. That's not the way to kind of show you're innocent.
Absolutely. And of course, since we don't have to show innocence, I do understand what you're saying, that if I were charged with anything, I would want to make sure that what's on my note.
Right, yeah.
P's and Q's.
Yes.
P's and Q's. But people offending while on bond is not a new thing.
No, it's not.
It's not a new thing, and it's not at the hands of one party's judges versus the other party's judges. I think that it's just important to note that there are a lot of things that have led to the rise in crime, and it's nationwide. But in Harris County, it's down 2%. And it is important for us to just make sure that we're following the laws, and that there are some things that could be changed in the legislature, but the judges can't,
Right,
create policy.
yeah. Everybody be sure to go vote, and I think you already told people why they should vote for you, right? If you didn't do it right now, I'm sorry.
Well, my name is Melissa Marie Morris. Remember, Melissa Marie for 263, Melissa Marie for 263. And I am running because I want to restore fairness and equity to this particular bench. I believe that the people of Harris County deserve a compassionate and a competent judge who will protect us from crime, from our neighbors, and from the overreach of government. Please vote all the way down the ballot. Melissa Marie for 263, Melissa Marie Morris for the 263rd District Court.
Melissa Marie Morris, thank you so much for joining us. We
very much.
appreciate it.
See, this wasn't that hard.
It wasn't that hard.
If it was hard, we wouldn't be doing it. Joining us now.
I get.
You get a plug in real quick.
It's another promo for axe grinding, fear mongering coffee, produced by my family's coffee business, only in Apopka, Florida. Not available for the New York Times.
Okay. Sit down here, right?
All right.
Okay.
I didn't realize that was your family.
Amber Cox, introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Amber Cox. I'm running for the 263rd Criminal District Court Bench.
Why did you pick that particular?
I picked that particular bench because I felt like we needed a judge on that bench that was a little bit more in tune with what was going on in the county. I think that the judge that was on the bench was giving too much consideration to one particular thing and not everything as a whole, specifically what she was giving consideration to when setting bonds.
Yeah.
That particular bench has several people that have been out on bond for murder and capital murder and committed new murders.
One of them
Yeah.
is now charged with the murder of the off-duty precinct deputy
Correct.
on
Right.
her son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, voters were not, and here's another race where Amy Martin was the incumbent and she lost.
Right, and she did. And so,
Tell us about your background.
well, I'm a prosecutor. I've been a prosecutor for, I don't know, several years,
Yeah.
5 or 6.
More than 2 hands?
No, actually, when I graduated from law school, I got a job with a defense attorney. His name was Gerald Burke, and he was trying a capital. The guy's name was Anthony Shore, and he.
I was at his execution.
You
Were you
were?
really?
Yes.
I know. Gerald and I called each
Yeah.
other that day and said, "Oh, today's the day."
I know, yeah, yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought that name sounded familiar,
Yes,
Anthony
it
Shore.
It was
Tourniquet killer.
the tourniquet
Yeah.
killer, right? Kelly Siegler. And so
Yeah.
he hired me out of law school because he had, I think he had 5 capitals set that year, and he needed help. So he hired me to help him work on that capital and take care of his other dockets. So I met Kelly, got an idea of what it was like being in the criminal courts, and I did criminal defense for several years until I had my first child, and that balance was difficult for me to be pulled away from my brand new baby.
Sure.
So I took some time to teach because I was pre-med in college. So I taught anatomy and physiology and physics and chemistry while my kids were going to school.
Oh.
And then when they got to a point where it wasn't drawing me away from law, then I applied at the DA's office because I wanted to be a prosecutor.
How long have you been with the Harris County District Attorney's Office now?
A little over 5 years.
Do you see an advantage to kind of, you've done both sides of the fence, right?
Right.
You've seen the defense side, you've seen the state side.
Right.
I mean, I would think as a judge, that might be a benefit.
You know, well, of course, yes, definitely, of course. And I remember whenever I was, when I started working for Gerald and we were working on that capital, everybody kept saying, "I can't believe that you would do that. I can't believe that you would want to defend people like that." And Gerald said to me, he said, "This isn't about getting people off. This is about making sure everyone did their job right."
Yeah.
And so I think that when you look at it from a different perspective, and you have all of these different perspectives. Now I have a prosecutor's perspective. I work in post-conviction writs. And so now I've gone through trial bureau. Now I'm doing post-conviction work where I'm seeing what happens in the courtroom from, in hindsight 2020.
Yeah, right, everything's
And
done now, and you're looking back, yeah.
Exactly, so I get the opportunity to look at what everyone did during these trials and what they did wrong that would jeopardize the conviction.
Yeah.
And
You're kind of seeing you're seeing the best.
Right.
And you're seeing the worst.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I love reading trial transcripts from some of the judges that I really have a lot of respect for, and just listening to how they dealt with the trial, how they responded to things that happened within the trial, how they protected the integrity of the trial.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to get on the other side of that conviction and have to tell victims we're either going to have to do it again, or
It's the worst feeling in the world.
It would have to be,
right.
yeah.
So, I had the defense side, then I had the prosecutor side. Now, I am a prosecutor, but what I look at is different than what people look at in trial bureau.
Yeah.
And as a trial lawyer. So,
It would be interesting to take a look back and where you see that, hey, this was, because in a lot of ways, the judge, this is how I always kind of viewed it. In a way, you're sort of this big referee, right? You're not rooting for anybody.
Right.
You're not on anybody's side. It's like you're listening to the state and you're listening to the defense.
Right.
And you just have to kind of be totally unbiased about everything, but make decisions that are gonna stand up in some appellate court, right?
and that's the reason why a judge, I think that might have been the impetus why judges shouldn't have been straight ticket voted in, because really there shouldn't be partisan judges. You shouldn't be sitting on a bench and pushing your political agenda or pushing your moral
Actually, one of the
agenda.
few states, I believe, that still has judicial candidates that run by party.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're there to follow the letter of the law as it's written, and you're the gatekeeper of what goes on in that court.
It's kind of sad in a way that there is this political part of it, because when you look at the idea of being a judge and the whole judicial system, because you want it to be impartial, but then you're bringing in political parties, right?
And I think that, especially after listening to Kat and Melissa, I think that at the end of the day, everybody really wants to be a good judge.
Yeah.
And what that depends on is whether or not you know the law.
Right.
So,
And I think that, it was the straight party ticket that sort of got a lot of judges elected. And there's a sense or a feeling that, again, there is misdemeanor bond reform. I mean, it's a federal judge said, hey, you got to do this. Everybody gets a PR bond. Nobody should be sitting in jail because they're accused of stealing something from Target or, some nonviolent offense. I mean, I think everybody agrees they understand that. But then I think you had maybe a segment of judges decide to take it on their own. That, okay, now let's do it on the felony level. But then are you really being a judge when you make that decision, or are you being an activist?
exactly. Everything has to be case by case.
Yeah.
If you have, and if you think about it like this, if you've got a guy who's on bond for murder and he gets picked up with a gun,
Yeah.
and he gets charged with unlawful carrying of a weapon, and he's in a misdemeanor court, and the misdemeanor judges have decided this is an automatic PR bond. They don't even go in front of a magistrate.
Right.
Well, then that's prevented accountability for that particular person, because he's on bond, and I'm pretty sure if he's on bond for murder, he's not supposed to have a gun.
Right. Yeah.
So now you've created a situation that is has taken the
Where does
decision away from the judge.
Right.
Just put those bond
That's one of the
conditions in
reasons why
place.
we had legislation last session,
Yeah.
Senate Bill 6, was because we started seeing a proliferation of personal recognizance PR bonds, specifically for violent offenders, and the data clearly indicated that's really not been seen before. So we had to get legislation passed so that you can't get a PR bond for defendants who are charged with most of
Right.
violent
Or
cases.
Well, the thing too, like we've done breaking bond for more than 2 years. And we're looking at all of these court documents, right? And we're saying, okay, this defendant, he's already gone to prison for this, this, and this. And now he's on bond for this, this, and this. And it's like, we're sitting there looking at these things like, well, you know something bad's going to happen, right? I mean, it's like, it's in black and white. You think somebody needs to stop this person.
Right.
They're not stopped. And then all of a sudden somebody ends up dead.
And now judges can take criminal history into account.
Yes.
Because they,
Is this your first time running for office?
yes, it is.
What's
What's
it
it
been
like?
like? Hey, we said that that was.
You will.
It's been interesting. It hasn't been as bad as I thought it would be. Whenever I said that I was going to run, everyone had an opinion, and there was a lot of death, doom, and destruction about running for an office. And at least I can say that a lot of the bad things have not, a lot of the, terrible things that you're going to come up against, those haven't come to fruition. But it's been interesting. It's been eye-opening to see what people really have to go through and what people really have to do in order to run for an office.
Did you have to do a lot of door knocking?
500 houses in one day. I mean,
Wow.
It's just, the judges have gotten together and really worked together to get out the vote.
Yeah.
To get the message out, like Melissa said, on the ballot, it's the felony court judges, then the county judge, and then the misdemeanor judges.
Yeah.
And so misdemeanor, civil, and probate.
Yeah.
Well, it's a long ballot, so the message has to be, don't stop.
No,
After you
right.
get to
Yeah.
the county judge,
Everybody,
candidates go
yeah.
all the way down.
Everybody
because there are
that,
so many other people.
if you're taking the time to vote, if you've already voted, if you're going to vote by Friday, you're going to vote next Tuesday, obviously you are going there because you care about this. So you're taking the time to vote, go all the way down, and don't necessarily look at races. Well, what's the D and what's the R? And do a little bit of homework. Find out what the kind of people that you want to be judges, do they
And
think?
that's why we wanted to do
Right.
segments like this.
Yes.
So that the
And there are a
public
lot
can
of
get to
people
know.
there are a
Yeah.
lot of people that, and I've never seen this before, but there are a lot of people who've really taken an opportunity to use a public platform to get the messages out that I've never seen before.
Yeah,
I mean,
especially not in a criminal district
right.
judicial race. I mean,
Right.
there are actually, look at all these ads that are on television and all this.
Oh.
That was unheard of. Yeah.
And people who have blogs, people who are publishers of magazines.
There's a lot of
A lot of-
interest in these races.
Right.
And as we've pointed out many times, I mean, go back to the primary, look at
Exactly.
incumbents that lost. I'm telling you, for many years, if you were the sitting judge, you were going to sit there pretty much as long as you wanted to, unless you did some crazy something and made headlines, right?
You ended up on one of your segments.
Well, that too.
So,
But we saw it in the primary.
Yeah.
Whenever, the further the people's names were down the ballot, the less and less votes.
Right.
The less and less votes they got.
Yeah.
So it's really important for everybody to get out and vote all the way down the ballot.
It really is. Amber Cox, tell everybody out there why they should vote for you.
My name's Amber Cox. I'm running for the 263rd Criminal District Bench, and you should vote for me because I believe in fairness, but I strongly believe in accountability. And we can have services for defendants until we're blue in the face, but those services only are as good as the people who are in them. And if you're not going to hold them accountable, they're not going to take advantage of those services. So accountability has got to be addressed.
Thank you so much. We've heard from 3 very intelligent women that want your vote. And of course, the incumbents have had an opportunity to speak as well. So far, no one has taken us up on that. But hey,
Come close.
Well, Amy,
we have. Right. Hey, be sure to watch tonight's Breaking Bond. It's kind of part 2 of what we started last week. We were taking a look at the 6 judges that were featured the most on Breaking Bond segments, and you'll hear from candidates running against them. And that'll be after
the Astros game.
Yeah. So you know you're going to be watching the Astros game, so just keep watching.
Again, remember you heard it here first. There will not be extra innings tonight. It'll be the Astros done in 9.
You want to put some money on that?
I'll put a cup of coffee.
There you go. Hey, thank you all so much. I appreciate that you're watching, and share all these behind Breaking Bond segments from the YouTube, the Fox 26 YouTube channel. Thank you. Bye.